We are now streaming live. Let's rock and roll. Okay. Here's my background. I'm trying to find my old background, but I can't find it. No, I've lost. Okay, that's better. Rather be in Yerushalayim, be in some arbitrary office somewhere. Yeah. Okay, boys, let's go. So I want to look at. Sorry, I want to look at the. Go a little bit into the Gemara, and then there are a couple of little parts of the sugyas that I want to look at, and then something struck me about the Gemara that I wanted to try and understand. This is not category yasi sanigor and sanigor yasi category. So I want to look at that a little bit more. So let's go minayin. So the Gemara asks minayin she'af b'shtar. So how do I know, right, that even you can do the Kiddushin with a shtar? So what's the basis of that question, by the way? Why wouldn't you be able to do Kiddushin with a shtar?
You're on
Hayam Aleph at the top. In other words, we know that a shtar is a means of kinyan, right? So if shtar is a means of kinyan, why shouldn't it be able to be used? Just bear that in mind, okay? Just bear that in mind. Medinhu, so it says, oh, sorry, where do we get it from? We learn it from a Kal V'chomer. So kesef is not moitzi, but it is machnis. Then a shtar, which is moitzi, surely it should be able to be machnis. Why? Can someone explain that Kal V'chomer to me? Why are we saying that to be moitzi, right? If you're able to be moitzi, surely it can be machnis. But if it can't be, it's not moitzi, but it is machnis. Right? You understand that? So what's the power here behind that Kal V'chomer?
There's seemingly a power in the first shtar that you sign. It's signing a contract effectively. And generally, signing a contract is regarded as much more important than breaking a contract or ending a contract. It's much got a chashivas to it.
Okay, but we said kesef can't be moitzi, but it can be machnis. Right? Shtar, which can shemoitzi, surely should be able einodin shemachnis. So the shtar can take you out of it, right? So surely if it can take you out of it, must be able to bring you into it, which implies what? That which is stronger.
Let's see.
The moitzi is stronger, right?
Yeah.
The moitzi must be stronger. Okay. So then says the Gemara, kesef can be used to be poide hekdesh and ma'aser sheni. So if you put that into a similar language to what was used above, kesef is able to be moitzi. It's moitzi, the kedusha of the hekdesh and the ma'aser sheni onto the kesef. So there's toima shtar she'ain poidin bo hekdesh and ma'aser sheni. So then let's say that the star she'ain poidin bo hekdesh and ma'aser sheni. So you can't use a star because it's not poide hekdesh and ma'aser sheni. Now it can't be used to be moitzi those things, and so therefore it can't be. Therefore, it's not as strong as kesef, and therefore you can't learn the Kal V'chomer because it says v'nasan hakesef hakamle. Why? Because the pasuk says the only way that you can do the pidyon of the hekdesh and the ma'aser sheni has got to be done with the kesef. Okay. If you look at Rashi's got an interesting girsa. So the first Rashi on the top, the shtar she'ein poidin bo hekdeshus. So it's different. It's a little bit different, right? Not hekdesh and ma'aser sheni. Let's just poidin bo hekdeshus. Okay. So it says im kasav legizbar. How would you possibly have a shtar that would be used to be poidin hekdeshus? How would you do it? So you might say im kasav legizbar shtar al ma'as pidyon hakodesh, right? So if you write a shtar on, in other words, you say to the gizbar, I owe you the whatever the ma'as are for the pidyon of the kodesh. Ein hekdesh padui. Then the hekdesh is not padui. Is not. You don't get the pidyon of the hekdesh. Why? The ba'ina v'nasana kesef v'kamle. Now, what does that tell me about a star? The star in this case, like an IOU. So what does it tell me about that star? That star is not Shaveh Kesef. Have you got that, guys? Because if it was Shaveh Kesef, you're not using the value of the paper or the whatever the stuff that the star is written on. You're using the star itself and the wording in the star itself in order to be paid. So the star, even an IOU, is not Shaveh Kesef. So give me an example of. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. We're saying the star cannot be. Is it right? Give me an example of an IOU that we use as Shaveh Kesef. We don't use them in South Africa anymore. I use them a lot in Israel. A check. A check is an IOU, right? A check is I write on it, I'm going to pay you $100, or my bank will pay you $100. So is that exactly Shaveh Kesef or not? So if I write, here is 100 Rand, but it's not really 100 Rand. It's just a check to the value of 100 Rand that when you go to the bank, you'll be able to use the word poide, you can redeem that check for 100 Rand. Would that check be considered to be enough kesef in order to be poide the hekdashos? I would think not. I'm not sure, but I would think not. Why? Because it's not kesef mamish. It seems to be that you need a kesef mamish. And if that's the case, since we do it there, you can't learn out the kal v'chomer. So Amakra, so it comes on the pasuk, and the pasuk says what? V'yatza'a v'hayasa. Right? V'yatza'a. She goes from the one ish v'hayasa lishacher. Makish havaya liyatzia. So we make a hekesh of the havaya to the yatzia, of the coming in to the going out. Mayatzia b'shtar. So we say that if you can go out with the shtar based on this pasuk, not from a kal v'chomer, based on the pasuk, so then obviously ma'yatzia b'shtar af havaya nami b'shtar. Okay. So says the Gemara, v'akish nami yatzia lahavaya, ma'havaya b'kesev av yatzia b'kesev. So then once you're busy making a kesef, why don't you just connect the two anyway? Say that in the same way as the yatzia, the havaya can be done with the kesef, after the yatzia can be done with the kesef. So Amar Abaya. So Abaya comes, and this is where I want to just look at a couple of things, and we'll get to this point. So Amar Abaya, Yoimru kesef machnis kesef moitzi. Are you going to tell me kesef machnis and kesef moitzi? The kesef brings out, and it's also moitzi. Sanegor yase kategor. So the how does it work? The sanegor is the positive. How does it become the negative? The one that brings in is going to take out, right? So therefore, says the Gemara on that, this is the same thing with star. If star can be moitzi, it should also be machdis. But how can you say that? Because kategor is sanegor. Okay, so it seems to be that the Gemara is wanting to some way equate star and kesef in terms of kategor sanegor, in order for us to not be able to learn out the star, and in order to say for sure we understand that kesef can't be moitzi. We get that. Kesef can't be moitzi. Sanegor yaseh kategor. But it seems to be the same thing, that kategor yaseh sanegor should also prevent us from allowing the star to work. If that's the case, so then we say very simply, why? Because each of the stars are different, and therefore, even though it's the same medium that's being used, they're different, and therefore you can do as it says in Rashi there. He says the high star elachud, v'high star elachud, v'zeh katuv loshen knisa, v'zeh mefurish loshen yitzia. Now look at this, interesting. Just by the way, in this Rashi, look at Rashi, how Rashi presents this. I don't know if you guys saw this when you were preparing, but look how Rashi presents. He says, "Bezeh katuv loshen knisa," in the one that is the star to bring you into the Kiddushin. It's written the language of knisa. Uvezeh, and in the get, which is the one is Yitzia, meforash loshen Yitzia. That's meforash, explains the loshen of Yitzia. I didn't get a chance to look into that. I just saw the question just before we got into the shir. I don't know if any of you guys had any aoras on that. If you do have an aora, I'd love to hear it. I don't know if you saw that. Did you see that, by the way, when you were learning it? In that difference in that Rashi. Guys, you need to respond to me, please. I love to hear your voices, not only mine.
No, I didn't see it.
Okay.
We saw that Rashi, but we didn't pick up on that point.
because I think what Rashi is showing is that it's not just the content, not just the content of the star, in terms of the one says Yetzirah, the one says Knissa. I think what Rashi is doing is saying much more. I think he's saying that there's something about the manner in which the writing is presented that would make it different. Because just simply putting the content, I don't think is enough. I'm not sure, but it's just something that struck me as I was going through it. Okay. So we said the following. We said that when it comes to, I want to go back up now. So we said the Rashi says, star she'ein pointing by hekdashus. We said the star, you're not pointing hekdashus. In Katav the Gizbar star, Almas, Pidyon, Hekdash is English to Padu, right? If you look at the Rashba on this, the Rashba says, Ma'ale kesef she'kein pointing by hekdashus, u'masros, val star ein pointing by hekdashus. What I'll do is I'll actually share my screen with you, then you can see it. Okay, can you see that Rashba here? So it says the Rashba, Perish Rashi, result. Im kasav star al ma'ois. If you write the star on the money, ein ekdish padui. It doesn't help. Why? Because you need the pasuk of that. You got to give the money mamish for kamlo, and then that establishes the pidyon of the hektish. The enemechuvar. So I don't understand. What are you talking about? Because in the same way, how does it? A woman also is a mukudeshes. Why? If you say to a woman, "Hareat mukudeshes li b'mana," he has 100. Hannah, I want to be mukudesh with this mana. Says, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you, instead of giving you the money, I'm giving you a star upon which is written that I owe you that money. Right? In that case, the same thing is she's not Mukudeshet. We're trying to bring the two together. The Rashba, I'm not going to bring the answer. The answer is like a whole story, which I don't really understand properly, but because he even says, but the point is that what he's saying is a brilliant question. The star of the pidyon, let's call it star pidyon, which doesn't work, says, I owe you money. Okay? And a star, the same star, and we wanted to say that you can't use you can't use that type of star, and we're trying to equate it to the kesef. But if you wrote exactly the same star for a woman, it wouldn't work. So then how can you say, so all you're saying is you've got two different starot. And if you've got two different starot, then the one is kesef and the one is star, so that you can't even equate the two together. So therefore, it says the mana ain't kan v'star kan. There's no money because he's not giving her money, and there's no star because the star doesn't say money in it. The star is that it's all it says is that with the star I'm makadesh you. Because he said that what he's being makadesh is not with the star, he's makadeshing her with the money. Umana and in a kind, and there is no money. You need to have the kesef proper. But Tzarich Iyun, and he goes through a whole arichas and trying to explain it, bring a Gemara in Ksuvas. But the point is, I wanted you to get the question, and you got the question is you're equating apples and oranges according to the Rashba, and so he shows how through a whole ganze arichas, which I don't want to go into, we don't have time, right? As to how, and others explain it as well, as to how you come out to say that's a different thing. The point is the question, and I think it's an important question, and I think it's an excellent question. Okay, let's go weiter. So the Gemara says, Amakra, the pasuk says, "V'yata v'aysta makish havaya letzia." We saw that my yetzia b'shtar, havaya b'shtar, v'nami b'shtar, v'akish nami yetzia havaya. We can connect the two. Look at this Tosfos. Tosfos says here. It says we want to equate the havaya b'kesef, and so to the yetzia b'kesef. Have you got the Tosfos on the page? So he says in an Indian beer. So he says if you're making the hekesh of kesef, of the havaya with kesef and the yetzia b'kesef, we're trying to show that you could be able to bring a yetzia through kesef because we got a havaya b'kesef. He says, why can't you do the same thing with beer? We know you've got kesef, star, and beer. Star, we're saying one thing. Kesef, we're saying one. We're trying to equate the two of them, kesef and star. Tosfos wants to know what is happening with the beer part of it. So it says, "Inyan bia leikela meimar mahavai bebia afitzia bebia." It's a bizarre question, but it's an interesting question because he's saying once you're comparing, compare them all. He says because it's ridiculous to say such a thing. Why? The whole point is trying to get rid of her. Why would he want to have beer with her in order to get rid of her? Right? The only way you have beer with her is because he wants to bring her close. For odd mishum, and the other reason is mishum matzah ba ervas davar, because the Torah says that that when is it that he's going to get rid of her? When he's matzah ba ervas davar, he finds something that he doesn't like about it, right? Ragil gosh, something ervas davar, like a regular thing that he doesn't like about her. Va'az yeshol lifrosh. So what's he going to do? He's going to separate. So if he's going to separate, you can't say that he's going to come together to get rid of her. So therefore, Tosfos says it's not even a question. It's not a real question. It's a theoretical question, but it's not a real question. Okay, you got it, guys? That's good. Okay, now, this is really what I want to look at because I think this concept of the...
But Rolf, can you...
Yeah?
I don't really understand Tosfos' argument because we're not arguing about what you want to achieve from Bia. We're arguing Bia based on what the Mishnah told us. Mishnah told us Kesef Shtar and Bia. So surely that could be used to get out of it. So what does it matter what the end result is?
He says because it's an illogical argument, it's an illogical thing to think that there would be a willingness to engage in some type of Bia if the whole point is lifrosh, is to separate themselves.
So he's putting an emotional aspect onto what we saw from the Mishnah as just
because it's real.
Because
it's real. It's like meta halachic in a way. Meta halachic in a way. Okay. You with me, guys? Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go weiter. So says I was going to share again. Let me just 1 second. Okay. So now I want to look at this idea a little bit further of this Katego Yasis and Negro thing. So he says the Gemara. Okay. Amar Abaya, so Abaya said on this thing of Kesef Machniv, Kesef Moitzi, you can't say such a thing. That's his response to the possibility, to the Havamina, to say that you can do the Hekesh. He says you can't do it. Why? Because Sanegor Yaseh Kategor, Ihaki, Shtarnami Yom Shtar Moitzi, Shtar Machniv, Katego Yaseh Sanegor. Okay, so that's the Gemara. Let's just go into. So the Gemara there is clearly telling us that there's this very profound concept that we have to be very, very aware of, and that is this concept of that you can't change one thing from one thing into and making it into something else. Because at the end of the day, you're saying that that which brings out can take in, and how can you make it that the thing that brings in, that was such a beautiful, positive thing, is also going to be the thing that destroys. So what I looked at is I saw a couple of nice mafrashim, and I want to try and go through that. So the Rashba says, have I shared this with you? Sorry, guys, I'm up and down on the sharing. Okay, the Rashba says, Yomru kesef mat kesef moisi yomru sanega yasek katega vekesef shemoitzi ba'ama ha'ivriya eina kategor delo nichnasa ele l'shifchus. So what's he saying? What's all of a sudden the Rashba adding here? So the Rashba is saying, hold on a second, we've got a concept of kesef being machnis and kesef being moitzi. Where do you have that? In an Amma Ivriya, which is the first thing we learned all the way from the beginning, right? That the Amma Ivriya, v'yatz achin amen kasef. That we know that she comes in with kesef, and that's when the father sells her into the status of the Amma Ivriya. But she comes out with kesef, right? V'yatz achin amen kasef. Yesh kesef l'adam. So it says kesef shemoitzi ba'Amma Ivriya eino kategor. Why not? Why is the kesef that moitzis her, if she's machnis, how come it's not considered to be a kategor? It says the lo nichnasa el shifchus, because her hachnosa wasn't a sanegor. Her hachnosa was not a positive experience. Normally, when we speak about that kanisa, we're talking about the positive experience of marriage. But here, we're talking about the negative experience of shifchus. So, and it's a completely different status of the money. And so therefore, the lo nichnasa ela l'shivchas, when she went in for shivchas, her coming out is as a free woman. And so therefore, it's a completely different status of the money. Perhaps one could say, and this was something I was thinking about as I was putting this through, why can't you say that katego nasis anego, that the same kesef that brought her in, which was for the shivchas, is now taking her out to becoming a positive thing? Just bear that in mind. It's a question.
Because the case in which she is when she pays for herself to get out is when she becomes an adult, when she has a status change, like I spoke about. She can't get herself out if she's younger than that.
Yes, but she's still got money. It's still money. Or is it something else? Are we saying something else?
I'll say in this case it's something else, because it's the money that she can pay herself. Normally she wouldn't be allowed to do that, but the fact that she's an adult, then she's able to do that.
And so therefore that the status of the kesef is different.
Yeah, the status of the kesef.
You can't compare the two statuses.
Yeah, because when it went in, it was under her father's rishus, and the father would have got the money had she come out before that. But now that she's gone on as an adult, then the money is a completely different thing.
Okay. Could be. I hear that. I think it's a nice argument. Okay. Let's look at this. Let's look at the, I've moved away out of the English translation. I think it's better not to have it, for us to work a little bit harder. I hope you don't mind. Okay. So look here in the Tosfos here. Can you see the Tosfos on the other page from Merkava? Can you see that? I don't know if it moves itself as well. Guys, you need to answer me. Can you see the Tosfos there?
Yeah, we can see it.
Thank you. So I mean, I know you like saying all of the Gemara that you don't want to like respond, but please do. Okay. The imtoima. What's imtoima? Tosfos asks a question. Sanegor yase katego. The positive becomes a negative. Imtoima kain heichi ka'amar la'el ma'ala ama'ivriya sheken yotza bekesef v'dinu shetay niknes bekesef. She says, how can you, the same question. It's phrased a little bit different. It says, Adarabba, Geriusa de ein katego nasa sanegor. Same thing. V'yesh loma, de ba'ama ivriya, leiken lameimer hachi lafi why, shemitchale she'avia moichra l'shivchusu, mekabela kesef mina adoin. Look who's getting the money. But initially, shemitchila she'avia moichra l'shivchus, when the father sells her l'shivchus, who mekabela kesef mina adoin, he gets the money. Imkain, so then when he wants to be paid to her, the din is that the adon must get the kesef. Val ish shemakadesh isha. Says, but when a man is makadesh a woman, hakol ba al yado, everything comes from him. There's no different people getting or giving money. It's the same person all the way time. Bein hakidushin, bein hagirushin. And therefore, etc. In other words, what he's saying, what Tosfos is saying that when it comes to an Ama Ivriya, it's not only about, and whilst I really like what you're saying, Yehuda, but I think what he's saying is that it's not only, and maybe you're even hinting to this, it's not only about the money that's doing it. You've got to see the whole story. It's not just kesef. It's the fact is who's getting the kesef and who's it coming from. When the same players are involved, then you can say sanegone ase kategor. But when there are different players involved, you can't say that because they're a completely different thing. They're completely different. So therefore, in the comes to the Kiddushin and the Gerushin, the Baal is the one who pays the money. The Baal would be, the Hava Amina is that the Baal would be the one who would pay the money for Gerushin. There's no, therefore the Gemara will ask on that, how can you say it? Because sanego yase kategor. But when it comes to the case of the Ama Ivriya, it's a little bit different because there are different parties involved. And so therefore it's clear that what the Gemara is saying is that when it comes in a single space, that's where we've got to focus on Sanego Yase Kategor. Where do you know, by the way, this concept of Sanego Yase Kategor from? Where do you know it most from? In an agadic sense, not in a halachic sense. So they're using this concept. So that's what bothered me about it, is you've got this like agadic concept that's now used, right, in order to create halachic reality. And not like sweet halachic reality, mamish. It's using it to say you can't do the kesef. So where do you get it? Where do you know it from? You should all know it well.
Isn't it something from Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur?
Yes. What's the thing on Rosh Hashanah?
I think that we become categories, don't we?
Leave us out of it. It's like leave God out of it. Like the old Litvaks. Don't bring God into this. We're learning Gemara, right? What's the where's the kategor and the sanegor on Rosh Hashanah? So what's the greatest kategor? Is the Egel Hazav, right? Always sits there on our shoulders waiting to happen. So therefore we can't use, according to some of the Mefarshim, you can't use the horn of a cow for a shofar because it's the kategor, nasa sanego. Sorry, So it doesn't make sense. It's totally the sakri. Where on the other hand, we have it also where the Kohen Gadol has got these beautiful, beautiful begodim. We know that these stunning begodim, and the problem is that the begodim is that they're gold. So how can you go into the Kodesh Kiddushin in order to get a kapara for Bnei Israel, right, wearing this gold garment? So you have to put on the white garments for the same reason. Okay, so now carry on in this idea. What I want to show you up to this point is actually just a summary of where we've got up to. I found a summary. It's a beautiful summary because it really goes through the tshuva, the kusha, everything we want to look at. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to have a look at it, and then I'm going to show you a beautiful just little like pshat, musar, beautiful little idea on kategor nasias, on sanegor yasi kategor. Okay, I hope you can see this. I'm trying to make it a little bit bigger if I can. There we go. Can you see that, guys?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's look here. So now the Gemara says, right? The obvious question, the question is clear, right? We're trying to understand where you get the star from. It says, "Im kesef shu kinyan pachot tov." If the kesef, which is a lesser kinyan, shara ein efsharus legaresh bekesef. You can't be magaresh with kesef. You can't do gerushin with kesef. You can still do the Kiddushin, you can bring her in. Shtar, the shtar is a much stronger means of kinyan, let's call it. Why? Because it can be magaresh. It's much easier to bring in than it is to send out. Like it's much easier to apologize than it is to ask. You know that old thing, right? You rather apologize than ask for permission, right? But vadashi and nitan lekadesh boy. So therefore, it must be that if that's the case, shtar, which is easy to be magaresh, you must be able to be makadesh with it. So comes the Gemara, Alden kesef hulo kinyan pachotov. So hold on a second. You can't say that kesef is a lesser strength kinyan in order to be able to use shtar as which is a higher level strength kinyan. Because why? Because kesef sharei nitan lifdos ma'aser sheni bekesef. Because we know that you can be poideh ma'aser sheni with kesef. What does that mean? Perish tzarich la'alot Yerushalayim. You want to take the perish to Yerushalayim. Mutar lifdos is a perish bekesef la'alois is a kesef Yerushalayim liknos perish achenu b'kumah. We know what that means. You just put the money instead of the perish, and you are able then to be poideh those perish. V'yeshai lifdot ma'aser sheni b'shtar. But so you can't do it with a star. So therefore, it says, no, we can do a hekesh. Makish, Kiddushin, the Gerushin, we can use it. V'lachen nitan lilmod, kashem shnistan legaresh b'shtar, kach nitan lekadesh b'shtar. Because you can do the Gerushin with the star, you can do the Kiddushin with the star. Mashik, Kiddushin, the Gerushin, kach nakish, Gerushin, the Kiddushin, and we want to do it the other way around. Hamaskona, and this is just important for this point in time. Hamaskona me'ahekesh asinu b'kusha kodemis. It brings us to some type of non-sforadika conclusions. I can understand. If you're going to say that you can be magarish with kesef, yatse, it comes out שאותו כסף שהוא גרם, והביא לחיבור בין איש לאשתו על ידי קידושין, that the kesef, which is the goyrem of the chibur בין איש לאשתו, is גם יביא לפירוד בין איש לאשתו, can also destroy the relationship between איש לאשתו. הסנגור יהפוך להיות קטגור, and it can't be that the sanegor can become a kategor, and so to the opposite. That's what he wants to say. And then he wants to say there's a meser. There's a beautiful meser which he gives. He says in Hilui Nishmas, his mother, Shalom is Bas Reb Yaakov, which is important for us just to remember, always to say something in the name Shem Omer. He says the following: Madua saneger lo yachol liyot kategor. He says, so what? So what if the saneger becomes the kategor? Why can't you do that? Why can't you just have that? Just the kesef can do this, kesef can do that. Why do you have to make it so that it's not so it doesn't work in some type of symmetry world? So nitan lomar ki lo yitachen she'adam o chefetz hamispaked kesanegor. Because what is a saneger? You can't say that a person or a thing that's there to protect, to defend, it's protecting the person or a situation, suddenly changes like a leopard changing its spots. Suddenly becomes a category. How can you say that something which was there to protect, was there to do something so positive, can suddenly change its spots? Right. That's the issue that's going on here. He says, it's coming to teach us a very important way of being. So we have to remember that a person's going on a certain specific path, okay? And that's the path that a person chooses. Adam or chayfetz lo yecholim lesachek shnei tafkidim hafuchim ba'esav v'oina achas. A person can't play two roles. It's not possible to really play two things at the same time. As it says, you can't ride on two horses. You just can't do it. He says the kvias of this concept of the sanegor doesn't become a kategor. And the opposite way around, it's coming to give us a direction. Like, what is our most important direction? Let's say we take a side. You take a side. The reason you take a side is because your fundamental values, your core values, are the things that push you towards a certain opinion or a fundamental belief or fundamental understanding. Those are the things that push us towards a certain belief in any machlokas, in any judgment, in anything. It's very difficult to change towards the other side. He says amazing. He says if we want to really guard our children, and I think it's not only about children, if we extend it to any relationships, and we want to be the ones that are seen as being beloved for them, we always need to ensure that we are always on the side of the sanegoria, of the positive. Even if they do something that's not a good thing, we have to always be their defenders and always to find the good thing. And always find the positive aspects of their deeds. And I think that's true of any relationship. I don't think it's only the true of this. And what he's saying is such a beautiful idea, is that the Gemara brings out how can you say that which brings a couple together can break them apart? And I think for us, it's the most stunning concept, that it's in everything we do, that we need to find what are the things that bring us together, not the things that break us apart. And if we have a certain way of being, then we've got to maintain that, a certain level of consistency. However, it does sometimes require that we have to look deep into ourselves. There's an amazing parish of Reb Chaim Volozhiner on the Vilna Gaon's parish on the Machzor of Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. And he says the most like astounding thing. He says, why does a tzaddik, let's say the Vilna Gaon, I mean, how many Averas did the Vilna Gaon do? Very few, I would say. He says, why does the Vilna Gaon have to do tshuva? Why does a tzaddik have to do tshuva? Tzaddik by definition is a person who keeps all the Torah. He says, because it's not only about what we do, but it's about the path that we take. And sometimes in our lives, we take certain paths that are paths that we think are the right paths for us, but because we're so caught up, perhaps in the kavod, the kinna, the taiva, all these different things that are specifically in that path, that might actually not be the best path for our spiritual growth. That maybe we need to be somewhere else. And that's what the deep introspection has to be on Yom Tov, and that's the concept of sanego de asekatego, that might be at certain times in our lives we actually have to switch, and that which brought us in might be the very thing that pulls us out, but that's only in extreme circumstances. So I want to stop there, if you don't mind. I think we've done quite a lot. We've done a number of Tosfosim. We've done some Rashis. We've done I mean, there is one more Tosfos that I wanted to do. Are you guys good to go for a few more minutes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then let's go. So then let's go back into the Gemara and get there.
Rav, can I just ask a question?
With pleasure.
I don't really understand the whole, when we say we bring kesef and we bring the proof from the Maaseh Sheni.
Yeah.
Why is that a proof that that money can get me out? Okay,
because what the money does, that's what the interesting part about the Maaseh Sheni is, that the money is a yetzia. It extracts the kedusha out of the fruit, call it, and puts it into the money. So it's moitzi in a real way. Therefore, when I say kesef, it should also be moitzi.
I understand that, but we don't have a problem with what money is doing. We have no problem. We want to use the money. The problem is that we're using money for this, and we're using money for something else. So I'm saying we're not using for Maaseh Sheni. We're only using it once. We're not using it on the other side. There's no other way of using it.
No, okay, I now understand what you. So no, the kesef that is talking about of sanego and sanego is not talking about the kesef of Maaseh Sheni. That's the kesef of Kiddushin.
Yes, yeah, for sure.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's you with me. So yeah. I'm not understanding your question. You're saying, why do we bring? We're happy
with the
case of
assumption.
kesef. Okay.
Correct. We're happy with the assumption that kesef can get me into it because the Mishnah told me. So we're going to.
Well, we know it's not even an assumption; it's a din.
Correct. So the question is, so how can it get me out? Why is Maaseh Sheni something that teaches me it's getting out? Because what, I'm changing the money.
No. Oh, it's not about getting out. No, what the Maaseh Sheni is, our issue was that we've got a star, and the star is moitzi. So we want to say that the kesef, which is not moitzi, right, but it can be machnis. The star, which is moitzi, should be able to be machnis. But then we said, no, you can't say that, because you can't say that kesef is a weak kinyan. Kesef has the ability is so powerful that it can be moitzi things as well.
Oh, so you're saying because Maaseh Sheni is such a big thing, then?
Yes. So, and whereas a star is unable to be moitzi on the kedusha of the Maaseh Sheni.
Oh, I see.
You understand it? So we actually just threw that whole argument out. Once we brought the Maaseh Sheni thing, we threw that argument out, and then we went into the hekesh of Yatsa v'Haisa.
Okay, gotcha.
Which we also threw out, but okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
Okay, guys. Any other questions? I'm going quite fast, as you know, but if there are questions, please stop me. I'm very happy there. Okay, so we said, "Mini da havishtar lechud, mini da havishtar lechud, hachinami hai kaspa lechud, hai kaspa lechud." Says, well, if you're going to tell me, and now you have to understand that what Rashi is telling us. Remember, Rashi said when it comes to the fact that the shtar, I'm jumping back straight into that. Okay, that the shtarot are different because Kashu knows because why? Because they're written in a different way. Ksiv loshen knisa, mafurish loshen yatzia. So we say, well, the kesef's also the case of hakaspa lechud. Rashi says Kashu knows no mafurish almanas mahu knows no. It's clear why he gave it. Each time he gives it, why can't you say that he can be moitzi with the kesef? Because you can just say what the kesef is for. So the Gemara says, sorry, I lost it. Sorry. Tiba miachadhu. The Gemara says, no, you can't say that. You can't say that because the very essence of the coin is the same thing. The shtaros are totally different. The one is kasuv, loshen knisa. The other one is maforish, loshen yitzia. Yes, the paper itself is the same, but the essence of the shtar is not the paper or the parchment. That is the shtar. The essence of the words on the shtar, but the essence of kesef. What gives kesef its value is what is the imprint on it. And since that the imprint on it is always the same, that's what he says. Says Rashi, it's the same thing. The value is sitting in the money, it's in the imprint on the coin. Since the value is in the imprint on the coin, there's no writing, there's no indication what it's there for. So therefore, you can't say that one that both of them can do the same thing. Okay. So on that, Rava Amar Kra, Rava says, hold on a second. We've got a pasuk. The kasav la. What does the pasuk says? It says very simple. Ki yikach ish isha uvala. That if a man takes a woman, uvala, and he sleeps with her, vayayim lo timtza chen beinav, and she doesn't find favor in her life, whatever reason, why ki matzah ba'ervas davar, whatever the ervas davar is, the kasav la sefer krisus, he writes for kasav la, he writes for sefer krisus, okay, v'nasim biyada, and he gives it in your hand, v'shilcha mi beis, and he scopes her out. Ksiva miskareshes. Says the Gemara. Rava says, Ksiva is miskareshes. Va'ena miskareshes. Bekesef. We know that you don't get, you can't be divorced with money. Va'ema beksiva miskareshes. Va'ena miskadeshes beksiva. So then why don't we say that in the same way as you can be miskareshes with ksiva, but you can't be miskareshes with kesef. So too, with ksiva, you can be miskareshes va'ena miskadeshes b'ksiva. Understand? That's the question. If it's all about miskareshes and kesef, you can't be miskareshes. So maybe the only thing you can do with ksiva is miskareshes, not miskadeshes. So kam ha-ksiv, it says v'yatza'a v'hayasa. It says the pasuk that we said all the way from the beginning. V'yatza v'haysa, makish, etc., etc. My ra'isa mistavra. So the Gemara says, it's right. It's logical. Chai begerushin, mamayit gerushin. Pa begerushin, mamayit kiddushin. So the Gemara says, what do you say? When we're speaking about gerushin, it must be a specific gerushin. Chai begerushin. But when it's speaking about Gerushin, why would it probably be Mamayat the Kiddushin? You know, the Gemara is saying that you brought this pasuk. It's a great pasuk. It's a wonderful pasuk. And it's all the Hekashim and all that, but it's speaking specifically about Gerushin. Why would you now extend it into Kiddushin? Ula Rabbi Yossi Aglili. And Rabbi Yossi Aglili says, the Apik Leila Haikra Le Drosha Achrina. What he uses it for a completely different drosha. Right? What does he use it for? So how does he know? We'll get into what he's about. For Amar Kra, the pasuk says Sefer Krisus, Sefer Kursa, it's very simple, right? It's because it says that a Sefer is Makares, does the Krisus, and nothing else can do the Krisus. Vatrabonen. What do they? Krisus. What do they do with the same thing? Because they don't use my avdiyah. What are they going to do with this concept of Krisus? They're coming something which cuts between the two of them. Okay, I'll leave it there for the moment. Okay, they're talking about this thing that is koires beinoy leveina. So now, what I want to look at is is this part that we're going to come up to now. Kedesanya. Harei ze giteich. When he says to her, Harei ze giteich, al manat shelo tishti yain, then on condition that you don't drink wine. On condition that you don't go to your father's house. Right? If he says those are the conditions, it's not krisus. But if he says kol shloshim yom, then it is krisus. On that, ein ze krisus. Rashi says, if you look at the Rashi, Rashi says, why is it not krisus? Shekol yameahin egedes boy lekayim tnazim machmasoy. Because all her life she is then when egedes. What egedes? She's bound to him to fulfill the tnaim. And like it's a fascinating thing. He's saying, I'm going to be Megureshed you on certain conditions, but the certain conditions binded to him the whole time. Says, but if it says 30 days, it's immediate. Why? The heat is kayem to know. Because why? Because these things will happen. Tosfos says there on that situation, right? That you don't go you don't go back to your father's house ever. Ein ze get, it's not a get. So Rashi quotes from Rashi, perish bekuntras. Shekol yamei neget es lekayem t'nai ze machmasoy. Says because her whole life she's going to be bound to uphold this condition, right? Because of what he said. So he says, well, obviously that's ridiculous. Why? Because what happens when a father dies? It's the same as 30 days. Eventually, your father's going to die. Because then she can go, once her father dies, she can go back to the house. And she's no longer connected to him. It's no longer called Beis Aviyah. And he quotes from the Gemara in the Dorim. A person who says a kohen, some type of oath that they're not going to go into a person's house. When the person dies or they sell their house, they're allowed to go back in. A person doesn't carry their house for forever. The minute a person moves out of that space or a person passes away from that space, that space changes. The ownership and the identification, so to speak, with the person that was. But Yesh Lomar says, hold on a second. It's not so simple. You know why? The Beis Aviyah kruyim kol yotzei chalatzav shel Aviyah. Says, you know what? The Beis Aviyah, no matter how a person dies, I don't know if any of you, like have ever moved, or if you had, I don't know, Boba, Zedas, whatever, moved, but you drive past that house, you say, that was my Boba's house. It's not like the house on whatever road. We sold our house in before we moved to Cape Town. We sold our house in Waverley. So it's still that there's what was our house. So the people who come from the Beis Aviyah always identify that house as Beis Aviyah. Afal gav shemei, says Tosfos. And where do we learn that from? This is so geschmack. We learn that from a pasuk. The pasuk concerning Tamar, because it says concerning Tamar. I'll show you the pasuk now. Give me a second. Concerning Tamar, it says the pasuk says, Yehuda says to his daughter Tamar, okay, Shvi almana beis avich. Shvi almana, stay as an almana, beis avich, or return as an almana to your father's house. Ad yigdal sheila b'ni. This is after his first two sons had been killed when they've been with her. He didn't understand what was going on until Sheila, my other son, gets older. Ki amar pen yamus kamul ke'echal, because I'm worried he's going to also die, right? V'teilech Tamar v'teishev beis Aviyah. She went back to the Beis Aviyah, and Tosfos says, what? Afal pi shemeis Aviyah temechuche krai. The psukim learn out that in actual fact that her father was already dead. And since her father was already dead, it's no longer Beis. She still considered it to be Beis Aviyah. Since it's still considered to be Beis Aviyah, from a story in the Torah, then when a man makes a conditional get on Beis Aviyah, it's never going to be Chal, because it's always Beis Aviyah. It's always, no matter how, until the she or the whole family no longer identifies the place as Beis Aviyah, it's no longer considered to be Beis Aviyah, and so therefore that get holds. So that get doesn't hold at all, because the condition is not a condition that she can hold by. So let's stop there, guys, if you don't mind, and please God, we will continue Next week, we're going to go into chuppah. So chuppah, there's a lot of like different sugyas within chuppah. So we might take a couple of weeks to unpack that next amud. Okay, guys. Have a wonderful evening, guys. Any questions?
Thank you.
Pleasure.
So what
Thank you, Rav.
happens if she breaks the conditions of the get and he's remarried?
Well, that's why you can't have it.
So even the
30 days is something that's real. You don't have to worry about 30 days. You only have to, because that'll happen after 30 days at the time it's done. But if there are other conditions, those conditions don't work, because there's always a way of making sure that she never be able to fulfill those conditions. Like you're saying, right? She does something and then she gets remarried, he gets remarried. It's all a disaster. It's very hard.
Fine. Also, is chalitza considered a form of Kiddushin?
No. Chalitza is Kiddushin is only when there's a real connection. Chalitza is to break the zikah. It doesn't break it's not as strong a connection. It's not a stronger bond.
Okay, fine.
Okay.
Perfect.
It's almost like an avoidance of creating that bond.